What does it say about us, about human society, that some of the best, most entertaining and most talked about after the fact gaming moments come from deceiving each other and lying to one another? It says we some sick who like social deduction games. Welcome back to Mystery Manor, a particularly puzzling place full of social intrigue and enigmatic enigmas to solve. In this video, we're going to dive into social deduction games, their histories and their mysteries, and what makes them so much fun to play.
Social deduction games are all about concealing information. Generally, players are split into groups with opposing win states. The big twist being that information about who is attempting to achieve what is not common knowledge. It's up to the players to deduce what they can about their fellow players, work out who to trust and who to mislead on the path to achieving a win. This uncertainty of who you can and can't trust adds a feel of espionage and subterfuge and forces players to get involved with the game on a new level. No longer is the state of the game solely reliant on a board or a computer. The real game takes place in the interactions that you have between players. There's a huge amount of overlap between social deduction and hidden knowledge game mechanics, the main difference being how the concealed information is used and how it's revealed to the other players. So, how does this all work? Before the game begins, as the board is being set, as the table is being laid, players are secretly given a roll, often by drawing a card from a deck or other similar methods of randomization. Once given, the rolls are concealed from the other players, only to be revealed come the proper moment. Each roll comes with its own mechanics. In some games, rolls come with a specific ability or actions, but in almost every social deduction game, the roll comes with a win objective. This could be aligned with the other players or directly opposing them. Either way, it's up to you now to play the game while navigating social currents created by the other players. Making it too obvious which role you're playing could paint a target on your back, leaving you exposed to getting knocked out of the game. But being too cagey could leave the other players unable to trust you, making it near impossible to complete your goals. As the game goes on, you'll have to behave somewhat duplicitously towards your friends and fellow players in order to get ahead. These games take place as much in the conversations that you have beyond the rules as they do on the sheets of paper and boards of card that make up the physical game.
Speaking of games, as we often do, let's look at the kind of games that social deduction mechanics show up in. By definition, social deduction games require a tiny microcosm of society, otherwise known as other players, to play the game with. The cover of the box is over there, and then I looked and it was here, and then it was over there, and then it was over here. Sorry, give me the line again. It's impossible to play a social deduction game on your own. Well, maybe not impossible, but it is very difficult. Josh plays Werewolf on his own. We'll film that later. The social nature of the mechanic plays really nicely with party games. Something you can sit around with a few chums and play for a little bit. Anything from 15 minutes to a couple of hours. Games that are easy to teach, easy to learn, and quick to play. I think Werewolf, or Mafia to the less whimsically inclined, is a particularly standout example. It's very easy to get a game going, maybe over a drink at the pub, or at the kitchen table while you wait for dinner, or a latecomer for the big game of the evening. I've had evenings where we wound down after a particularly heavy D&D session with a quick game of Werewolf. These quick games often spiralling into me being up well past my bedtime, with the beloved phrase, just one more game. Far away on the other end of the gaming spectrum, social deduction mechanics can crop up in wargames. I spoke about web diplomacy in a previous episode, so go check that out, but it works here as a great example too, when the game is played anonymously. It's hard to know who to trust in a wargame when you don't know which other player is playing which opponent, leading to wonderful subterfuge and harebrained strategies that win or die on a whim. Russia, 1986. Dmitry Davidov, a sociology student at Moscow State University, creates Mafia, a game that pits an uninformed majority against an informed minority. The Mafia. The game was conceived as part of a study to prove that an uninformed population would always lose against a more educated few. A proof that knowledge really is power. And when you play the game as it was originally rolled, this is often the case. Without seers or healers or other fancy rolls, it's far more likely that the Mafia will win over the townspeople. It's only when you start giving individuals abilities that can glean more information about their enemies that the odds swing in the favour of the people. Quite understandably, the game spread like wildfire. It's fun to play and it gives an excellent insight into the human experience. Soon Mafia was being played all across the university, from lecture halls to dorm rooms and then on into the wider world. In 1997, award-winning interactive fiction writer Andrew Plotkin, or Zarf, released Werewolf, a rethemed version of Mafia, in an attempt to make the game more culturally relevant to a wider audience. He also argued that the game's day-night turns were more relevant to his werewolves and villagers setting than it was to a Mafia killing spree. In Werewolf, turns of the game take place across a day in a quaint little village. Each player is given a role, either as a peaceful-ish villager or a savage werewolf. Every night, the players all close their eyes and go to sleep. The werewolves then open their eyes and choose one village to kill before closing their eyes again. Come the morning, all the players wake up together, not knowing who among them is hiding a monstrous beast within, or who's playing a werewolf in the game. The person running the game announces that there was an attack in the night, and one of the players is dead, having been brutally slaughtered by werewolves. All the players then discuss and vote on one player to lynch, peacefully-ish. After they've killed someone, again peacefully-ish, it's then revealed whether that player was a werewolf or just a regular villager. The werewolves are aiming to kill all the villagers without being discovered, while the villagers are attempting to kill all the werewolves before they complete their killing spree. The main meat and bones of the game take place within the discussion phase, with players wildly accusing one another of being werewolves while vehemently expressing their own innocence. It's super simple, and while generally played with a deck of cards, it can be run anywhere without any pieces. You can also play with basically as many people as you want. This is for 6 to 24, so it's perfect for those game nights where a few too many people show up, like that ever happens. In the years following, this standard formula has been iterated on countless times, often by adding new roles, like the seer, who can select one person each night and tell if they're a werewolf, or the healer, who can protect one person from being killed every night. There are also plenty of games that evolve the standard formula of werewolf in interesting and different ways. Want something a little more grounded and political? Secret Hitler, which you can print and play totally free, spins the rules into a political setting, with secret fascists trying to get elected into power ahead of unwitting liberals. Want something punchy and quick, with loads of familiar theme and a handful of special powers? The Resistance put players as resistance operatives trying to bring down an evil empire, but some among you are Imperial spies doing their best to bring down the rebellion and restore peace and order to the galaxy. You just love pirates? I just love pirates! Traitors Aboard puts players on a pirate ship full of looty booty. Some of the crew just want to get back to port to safely spend their ill-gotten gains, while others, the mutineers, will do anything to prevent this. What if you want something more serious? A proper game with progression and development, something you can really sink your teeth into for a couple of hours or even longer. Blood on the Clock Tower is to Werewolf what Gloomhaven is to Snakes and Ladders, coming in a decadent box full to the brim with individually wrapped mysteries. Can the villagers of Ravenswood Bluff work out who among them is the bloodthirsty demon before it's too late?
Interestingly, social deduction games came to video games via a more roundabout route than normal, with online forums and chat rooms being used to run games of Mafia and Werewolf as early as the year 2000. Rather than the game studio trying to capitalise on the success of these games, it was the public capitalising on the accessibility of an online community. This user-generated expansion into video games continued, with modders making custom maps for games like StarCraft and Warcraft 3, twisting real-time strategy games away from straight war games and into something much more socially intriguing. In 2004, Gary Newman created a mod for Valve's Source engine, somewhat indulgently naming it Gary's Mod, an easily adaptable physics-based sandbox with no objectives other than those that you set for yourself. Gary's Mod was the perfect candidate for the community to create their own game modes. After a full release published by Valve themselves in 2006, Gary's Mod became a playground for aspiring devs to create and prototype their new games. Being before easily accessible free game engines like we have today, this was a massive deal. How does it relate back to social deduction gaming? Have you ever heard of Trouble in Terrorist Town? This Gary's Mod add-on that adds werewolf-like gameplay became wildly successful, mostly off the back of its easy streamability and its engaging social gameplay. The same interactive social deduction gameplay led to the success of mainstream mega hit Among Us, developed by an indie team who cut their teeth on new grounds. After being picked up by streamers worldwide, the game took off, leading to estimated sales of over $100 million. In Among Us, 4 to 15 players spend the game completing simple tasks on a spaceship. Each task comes in the form of a mini-game, like connecting wires to repair a panel or downloading data from a computer. The mini-games are easy to complete on their own and offer little but a mindless distraction, until you throw in the fact that 3 of your fellow crewmates are imposters, trying to sabotage the ship and kill all the crew. Connecting those wires suddenly becomes an intense race to complete the task as quickly as possible, before an imposter can sneak up on you and take you out while you're distracted. Like in Werewolf, the crew can call votes to throw someone out of the airlock, with the crew winning if they can eject all the imposters before they can kill everyone. It's a fun party game to play with friends or strangers on the interwebs.
One of the best things about social deduction gameplay is that it adds depth and complexity to any game without adding lots of extra mechanics. All of the extra gameplay takes place with you just chatting without any need for any additional rules. These extra mechanics and conversations can be added into any kind of game to really bring it to life. It works really well in role-playing games like D&D. I ran a campaign set in the Underdark where none of the players could trust each other and they all were trying to work out who was on which side, bringing social deduction mechanics into the RPG.
Social deduction games can sometimes go a little wrong, because your whole act and process is being questioned throughout the game. It can cause high-stress scenarios where one player pushes things a little too far, and before you know it, Grandma is lobbing the toaster at you.
Is that based on a true story?
No. I think this arises because of the generally looser set of rules, or at least those that are more easy to bend than in games like chess. Add to this the fact that everyone is acting and investigating each other, and tensions are bound to run high. Another disadvantage to keep in mind is that you can't easily pause social deduction games without a high chance of someone slipping up and revealing a little too much information. As funny as that can be, it's also pretty annoying after an hour of play. One major con is that you can't crack out a game of snakes with just 2 players. You need a reasonably large group of people, all of whom are willing to take part in the game, and this can be hard to come by. There are definitely people out there for whom hiding information is more stressful than it is joyful.
My favourite game featuring mechanics of the social deduction persuasion is the 2005 cooperative game Shadows over Camelot. 3 to 7 players take seats around the table as Knights of Camelot. The forces of good are under siege from all sides. The Picts, the Saxons and the Black Knight all want to see Camelot in ruins. Each turn the knights will spend their time either questing to find legendary items like Excalibur or the Holy Grail, or attempt to battle one of the attacking forces and keep darkness at bay. There are always more quests that need urgent attention than there are knights available, and every turn Camelot draws ever closer to destruction. For every victorious quest, a white sword is added to the round table. For every failed quest, a black sword goes on the table instead. At the end of the game, the players only win if there are more white swords than black swords lying atop the mythical table. This alone is an incredible board game. I absolutely love the theming, and the juggling of different quest mechanics is always entertaining. But Shadows over Camelot has one final devious trick up its sleeve. At the start of the game, every player is randomly dealt a loyalty card. There are more loyalty cards than the maximum number of players, so there is always a chance that every knight around the table is true and virtuous. Hidden amongst the loyalty cards lies one traitor card. Should a player receive this card, they spend the game not attempting to save Camelot, but instead doing their best to ensure that it falls. A knight can use their turn to accuse another knight of being the traitor, possibly removing the villain from the fold. But if incorrect, one white sword on the table is replaced with a black one. The traitor can actively play badly to swiftly bring the kingdom to ruin, but they can also be more sneaky and subtle about their wrongdoings, because if the traitor hasn't been revealed by the end of the game, 2 of the white swords are replaced with black swords, often leading to a sudden turning of the tides and potentially an unexpected loss for the heroes. You never know who is on your side or if there even is a traitor at all, in a juicy twist that keeps every turn feeling tense and adds extra weight to every decision you make. It really is fantastic. Sadly, the game is out of print and somewhat hard to acquire these days. I don't have a copy, but I have played with friends a few times, and it was really incredible. One day, it shall be mine.
Chameleon is always the number 1 choice of games at my family gatherings. You're given a grid of words with a certain category, say fruits. 1 card is dealt to each player and 2 dice are rolled. On the cards, everybody has a code to match the dice rolls to a fruit. For example, banana. Everybody except one, that is. The player who's been dealt the chameleon card. Once everyone is ready, you go round in a circle pretty quickly, saying one word to associate with the word that's on the card, and the chameleon has to try and blend in. After this civilized stage, intense discussion ensues, and accusations are thrown as to who is the chameleon. Everything is covered with a layer of vagueness though, because if the chameleon is discovered, they can still win the round if they correctly guess the word. So you can't go asking, how does pink relate to banana, you muppet? It also has the effect of meaning that your associated word can't be too direct. If two different players had said yellow and peel, it's a pretty easy job for the chameleon. Tenuous clues cause more accusations and desperate defences. Of course, the worst crime of all is to have chosen the same associated word as someone else. That would get anyone labelled as a chameleon. Social deduction games are excellent. They bring loads of interactions between players without adding extra complicated rules. It's really fun to bring the game off the table and into the conversations that you have around the game. The games that use it are often quick and easy to pick up and make great party games to play when you've got too many people for something else. It can sometimes be tricky to get enough people who are interested in playing a game, and these games do live and die on having people that are invested and engaged, as the entire game is built around the people at the table. When you've got enough players, it's brilliant, but if your group is on the smaller side, the social deduction can fall flat. Adding social deduction to other games, like war games and adventure games, is a great way to bring the world to life and leave players thinking about the decisions that they made long after the game is finished. There's nothing quite like a last-minute betrayal to leave players in shock for weeks to come.
Did you know that we at Hoopsnake aren't just a one-stop shop for all knowledge game mechanics? We also make stuff. I worked with a friend on an RPG called Firelight Heroes, a story-driven game about being heroic heroes and going on epic adventures. We also recently put out Hired Iron, a casual game about cracking off pot shots at bandits and keeping them away from your cattle. I'm going to do a short video on how to play it soon. You can find the rules for both games over on our itch.io page, linked below. The current versions of both games are totally free, so go grab a copy and have a play. Thanks for watching this episode of Mystery Manor. Working title. If you thought this was interesting, we have a whole playlist of videos digging into different game mechanics in a similar way. If you like this, you'd probably like those too, so go check them out. We're doing these once a month alongside some other bonus videos, so subscribe if you want to be first in the queue to watch those when they come along. I hear Matt's working away on the next episode of Everything's a Role-Playing Game, and I'm super excited to see what he has in store. Bye! Or like maybe I just and I'm a cloud of smoke. That would be cool. Do we have the budget for that?